Welcome back, my name is Pirate Biku. The game was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky, and this is the After Action Report. So, getting right into it, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky was not nearly as fun as I remembered it being. And I think a large part of that is down to, as I've gotten older, I've become more, I wouldn't say critical exactly, but more like that sounds kind of snobbish, but I really can't think of any other way to say it, but discerning of what does and doesn't work. And my issue with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers Sky is that it hides so much information from you. Not helped by the fact that even the usual suspects who would have the deep information, like the damage calculations and whatnot, Bulbapedia, Cerebi, places like that, even they didn't have any clear answers. And in a game like this, let me use an example. Binding of Isaac. It's a roguelike, and kind of like, and Mystery Dungeon is kind of a roguelike, but when you play Isaac, you very often get the feeling that the game hates you. That it doesn't want you to succeed, and it will pull every dirty trick in the book to do so. However, if the player is diligent and knowledgeable, you can get out of just about any situation. But that's the thing. Knowledge. Knowing where you can get your advantages, knowing what the game is fully capable of, knowing what you're capable of, knowing what items do what, and what synergies there are, etc. and so forth. When you play Isaac and you know what you're doing, there's almost never a feeling of this run was impossible from the start, but rather, if I had done something different earlier on, I might have been able to salvage this. Even there are some times when the game is just like, no, screw you. But it still feels like there was potential to solve the problem. But in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, there's none of that. Like, basic information, like how much damage a move does, how accurate a move is. Basic things like that are completely hidden from the player. Like, sure, you can show me a 5-star power rating, but what does that mean? And as I complained quite a number of times during the gameplay, accuracy just feels completely bonked. Like, I feel like there's no reason that you should be missing moves like Leaf Blade almost half the time. And that's just scratching the surface of the knowledge, like the lack of information the game gives you. Like the Ginseng, I spent 4 days trying to find out what the heck it even did, aside from putting a +1 next to your move. And I couldn't find any concrete answers. And the game wasn't telling me nothing. And when you don't, like, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon presents you a problem. That problem being, like, how do I hit my moves more often? Because it feels bad when you miss a move and you die because of it. But it doesn't give you a solution, because A, doesn't tell you how its accuracy is calculated, and B, it doesn't tell you if there's any way for you, the player, to improve your accuracy. I mean, Thunderfang only started hitting consistently after I got the IQ perk that raises my accuracy at the cost of my evasion. But what did those mean? How much did it raise my accuracy? How much did it lower my evasion? Moves against me seem to almost always hit anyway. So does the evasion stat even matter at all? And speaking of stats, well, obviously, the stats in Mystery Dungeon aren't comparable at all to the stats in the main game. Because, like, first of all, you never level up. Your level ups never give you speed stats. And your levels give you just 1s and 2s. Sometimes in only 1 or 2 stats. And that's not at all reflective of like a level up in the mainline game. So that means that you don't know what those numbers actually mean. There's no context for those numbers. You don't know how much a single point of attack increases your physical damage. You don't know how much a single point of special defense protects you against special attacks. And without knowledge like that, you can't plan ahead as effectively. And on top of that, the game often puts you into situations where your only real options are to either have an item, just so happen to have an item to deal with that situation, have a Reviver Seeds or 5, or get lucky. Like, how many times, like, for how often you run into monster houses, it is absurd that the game expects you to be able to deal with those monster houses without knowing like how to use paralysis orbs or the stun lock orb or whatever orbs, or having a room-wide attack. Like, speaking of room-wide attacks, the graduation exam with Wigglytuff's Guild, it's a kind of a scuffed example, but I knew Shinx gets discharge at level 42, I think it was. So I knew that if I just leveled, I would have a way to overcome the challenge, which is good, but at the same time, it required me to grind so many levels that eventually I just gave in and used Wonder Mail codes to get Joy Seeds. And that's only because I had a Pokemon of my 2 that had a room wide. If I had been a Torchic and a Trico, or a Riolu and a Chikorita, Mons that didn't have access to room wides, then I shudder to think how many levels I would have needed to eventually overcome that fight. 10? 20? 25? It wouldn't have been pretty. And the fact that the game can just force you into no-win situations like that is kind of absurd. Especially consider that even the act of grinding in and of itself, if you're not using Wonder Mail Joy Seeds to give you missions in the beginner dungeons, grinding for EXP is a gamble in and of itself. Every fight, almost, with basic enemies in each dungeon is a risk. And going back to the accuracy thing, it's a risk that can far too often backfire. So, while it feels like Isaac, the Binding of Isaac hates you, you're still given the tools to succeed. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon doesn't feel like it hates you or anything, but it just feels apathetic to you and doesn't give you any tools to overcome the challenges that it presents. Or at the very least, it doesn't clarify what tools there are and how you can access those tools. Like, to deal with traps consistently, you need an item from the very deep post game. So for 99% of your playthrough, if you're going for like a longer playthrough than what I ended up doing, you're completely at the mercy of traps. And unless you somehow stock up on Trap Buster orbs or Ice Seed drops or things like that, I drop seeds. And the fact that the game you have to rely on RNG to get past the game's greatest challenges makes the game unfun for me. I don't want to say that I dislike Mystery Dungeon, but it just felt like there was so much out of my control that it became deeply frustrating. As much as I love the story, as much as I enjoy the characters, the gameplay just infuriates me. It can turn a half-hour dungeon exploration into a 2-hour slog because you keep running into monster houses. And and speaking of, the punishment for dying, losing half your inventory, it's really, really bad. There's no other way to put it. To deal with so many situations in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, you need a specific item for that situation. Like I said earlier, a monster house, paralysis orb, hope the stairs aren't past the monster house. But if you've died to a random encounter with the Mon, or because you and your partner somehow got separated because of a warp tile, or what have you, and you lose half your inventory, you could potentially lose your reserves of paralysis orbs. And it's like, do I take the paralysis orbs with me in case I run into a monster house? Or do I leave them in the Kangaskhan storage where it won't be lost? But if it's in storage and I need it, then obviously I can't use it. So it's either risk a very important item or save it indefinitely almost, because it will never feel like it's worth it to risk the paralysis orb unless you're in a very important dungeon and even then, you can never know when you will run into a monster house. There's percent chances on certain floors, which is oddly one of the few solid statistics I could find about this game, but you can't know for sure. And even if you do somehow know that you're almost certainly going to run into a monster house, if you die before then and lose your petrify orbs based on an unlucky RNG roll on what gets lost, sorry, kiddo, unless you happen to find a new one lying around or in the Kecleon shop, you're straight out of luck. And that just feels so incredibly bad. Well, you get the point by now. There's just so much wrong with this game as a game. And it makes me sad to come back to a game that I loved as a child and see it in such a harsh light. But that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. But for the new year, we're going back to an old series. I've decided that I'd rather not voice a game for at least a little while. So I was contemplating whether to do Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep or Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2. Decided to do Birth by Sleep because, like I said, I don't want to voice act. Because that last episode with Dustnor, the voice I gave Dustnor, hurt my throat quite a bit. And I don't want to repeat that, at least for a while. So, yeah, that's the next Let's Play, Birth by Sleep. I want to do the Kingdom Hearts series in, like, mostly chronological order. But Birth by Sleep kind of throws a wrench in that, because it's like, do I play it before 1? Obviously not, because no one would understand what the heck is going on. Like, Kingdom Hearts 1 is Kingdom Hearts 1. It's the starting point. If you don't start there, then what are you doing? So, obviously, I started with KH1, went to Chain of Memories, and now we're doing Birth by Sleep, because this is, I feel, the best place to put it. But I'm rambling. Look forward to the first episode of my Platinum Trophy Let's Play of Birth by Sleep in 2 days' time. But until then, remember, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and if you be so kind, get off my lawn. Feel the casuals.